I've delivered this news 47 times in my career. 47 times I've had to look someone in the eyes and tell them their world is about to collapse. But the 48th time broke something inside me that never healed. It was a Tuesday morning in September when Isabella Mitchell walked into my office at Boston General. She was 34 years old, a high school English teacher, married to her college sweetheart Tom, and mother to two girls, Evelyn and Lily, ages 6 and 8. She came in complaining about persistent headaches and occasional blurred vision. Nothing alarming on the surface. We ran the standard tests, scheduled an MRI for the following week. I remember shaking her hand as she left, telling her we'd figure it out, that it was probably nothing serious. I believed that. I really did. The MRI results came back on a Friday afternoon. I was finishing my rounds, looking forward to the weekend, planning to take my son fishing like I'd promised. Then I saw the images. Glioblastoma. Stage 4. Inoperable. The tumor had wrapped itself around vital structures in her brain like roots strangling a tree. I sat in my office for 20 minutes just staring at those scans, hoping I was reading them wrong, hoping another radiologist would call and say there'd been a mix-up. But there was no mix-up. I called Isabella that evening and asked her to come in Monday morning. I could hear the worry in her voice when she asked if something was wrong. I told her we needed to discuss the results in person. That was the last peaceful weekend she would ever have, though she didn't know it yet. Monday came too quickly. Isabella arrived with Tom, both of them trying to hide their anxiety behind forced smiles. I led them to my office, the same room where I'd delivered good news, bad news, and everything in between for 12 years. But this felt different. The air felt heavier somehow. I closed the door, sat across from them, and looked at Isabella's face. She had her whole life ahead of her. Her daughters were still learning to read, still losing their baby teeth, still believing their mother would be there for every birthday, every graduation, every wedding. I opened the folder containing her results, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. How do you tell someone their story is ending before it should? How do you steal someone's future with just a few sentences? I started with the medical facts because that's what I was trained to do. Brain tumor. Aggressive. Advanced. But facts don't cushion the blow. Tom reached for Isabella's hand as I explained what the scans showed, what it meant, what we could try. Chemotherapy might buy some time, maybe 6 months, maybe a year if we were lucky. But there would be no miracle. No experimental treatment that would save her. No happy ending where she walks out of here cancer-free and watches her daughters grow up. Isabella didn't cry right away. She just sat there, processing, her hand gripping Tom's so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then she asked the question I knew was coming, the question they always ask. How long do I have? I gave her the statistics, the median survival rate, the best-case scenarios. But numbers don't mean anything when you're the one dying. The months that followed were a study in gradual loss. Isabella started chemotherapy immediately, determined to fight for every extra day with her family. I saw her every 2 weeks for checkups, monitoring the tumor's progression, adjusting medications, managing symptoms. She lost her hair by October. The headaches intensified despite the pain medication. Her vision deteriorated. But what struck me most was watching her try to maintain normalcy for her daughters. She still helped with homework when she could focus, still read bedtime stories when the nausea wasn't too overwhelming, still showed up to parent-teacher conferences even when walking required Tom's support. She was dying, and she was still being a mother. That takes a kind of strength they don't teach us about in medical school. I remember one appointment in late November. Isabella came in alone because Tom was home with the girls who had the flu. She looked exhausted, thinner, but she smiled when she saw me. We talked about her latest scans, which showed exactly what we expected. The tumor was growing. The treatment was failing. We both knew what that meant, but neither of us said it out loud yet. Instead, she asked me about my family, about my son, about whether I was managing to spend time with him despite my schedule. I found myself actually talking to her, really talking, not just going through the clinical motions. She told me she'd started writing letters to Evelyn and Lily, one for each year until they turned 18. Letters for their first periods, their first heartbreaks, their graduations, their weddings, all the moments she wouldn't be there to see. She was trying to mother them from beyond the grave, and the thought of that made my chest tighten in a way I wasn't prepared for. December brought seizures. We adjusted her medications, but we were running out of options. The tumor was pressing on more areas of her brain, affecting her speech, her memory, her ability to move her left side. She stopped driving, stopped teaching, stopped being able to hide from her daughters that something was terribly wrong. Evelyn asked her one day why Mommy was so tired all the time. Isabella told her the truth, or a version of it, that she was sick, that the doctors were trying to help, but that sometimes grown-ups get sick in ways that are hard to fix. I wasn't there for that conversation, but Isabella told me about it during her next visit. She cried in my office that day, really cried, for the first time since the diagnosis. Not for herself, but for them. For the childhood she was stealing from her daughters. For the memories they wouldn't get to make. For the empty chair at their future wedding ceremonies. By January, Isabella couldn't walk without assistance. Her words came slowly, jumbled sometimes, her brain betraying her even as her spirit fought on. We had the conversation I'd been dreading. The conversation about hospice care, about comfort measures, about accepting that we'd done everything medicine could offer and it hadn't been enough. She took it better than I did. She'd had months to process what I'd tried to deny. She was ready to stop fighting the inevitable and start focusing on the time she had left. She asked me how long. Weeks, I told her. Maybe a month. She nodded, thanked me for everything I'd done, and asked if I would visit her at home sometimes. Not as her doctor, but as someone who'd walked this journey with her. I said yes without hesitation. I visited Isabella at her home for the first time on a cold Saturday in late January. Their house was small but warm, filled with photos of happier times. Evelyn and Lily were playing in the living room when I arrived, their laughter a stark contrast to the reality upstairs. Tom met me at the door, looking like he'd aged a decade in 6 months. He led me to their bedroom where Isabella lay in a hospital bed they'd set up by the window. She could see the backyard from there, watch the birds at the feeder Tom filled every morning. Small comforts when your world has shrunk to a single room. She smiled when she saw me. That same smile she'd worn on the first day we met, now framed by a face hollowed by illness. We talked for an hour about nothing important. About the weather. About a book she was trying to finish, about her daughters who were being so brave. She didn't talk about dying, and neither did I. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone at the end is pretending the end isn't coming. I started visiting every few days after that. It wasn't protocol. It wasn't what doctors typically do. But Isabella had become more than a patient to me. She'd become a reminder of why I'd chosen this profession in the first place. Not to perform miracles, but to witness humanity in its rawest form. To sit with people in their darkest moments and remind them they're not alone. Each visit I could see the decline. Her speech slowed further. Her lucid moments became shorter. But she always knew who I was, always tried to smile, always asked about my son. Even dying, she thought about other people. That's the kind of person she was. One evening in early February, Tom called me at home. Isabella had taken a turn. Her breathing had changed, become labored. She was slipping in and out of consciousness. The hospice nurse said it would be soon, maybe hours, maybe a day. I drove to their house even though it was late, even though I wasn't on call, even though there was nothing medical I could do. Tom met me at the door, his eyes red from crying. The girls were asleep upstairs, mercifully unaware that they were about to lose their mother. I went to Isabella's room. She was lying with her eyes closed, each breath a struggle. I sat beside her bed and took her hand. Her eyes opened slightly, and I think she knew I was there. I told her it was okay to let go, that Tom would take care of the girls, that she'd fought as hard as anyone could fight, that she could rest now. She died at 3 a.m. with Tom holding one hand and me holding the other. The room was quiet except for the sound of Tom's sobbing. I'd seen death before, many times, but this one felt personal in a way the others hadn't. I stayed while the hospice nurse made the necessary calls. I stayed while they prepared her body. I stayed because leaving felt like abandoning her, even though she was already gone. When I finally left as the sun was rising, I sat in my car for a long time before I could drive. I thought about Evelyn and Lily upstairs, still sleeping, about to wake up to a world without their mother. I thought about all the moments Isabella would miss. I thought about the letters she'd written, her voice reaching forward into a future she wouldn't see. I attended Isabella's funeral on a gray Thursday afternoon. The church was packed with students, colleagues, friends, family. All these people whose lives she'd touched. I sat in the back, not family, not quite friend, something in between. Tom spoke about their love story, about the life they'd built, about the hole she'd left that nothing would ever fill. Evelyn and Lily sat in the front row, too young to fully understand the permanence of goodbye. I watched them, these two little girls who would grow up with a mother-shaped absence in every important moment of their lives, and something inside me shifted. For the first time in my career, I questioned whether I'd chosen the right path, whether watching people die, being present for so much loss, was something I could continue to do. The weeks after Isabella's death were difficult. I went through the motions at work, seeing patients, making diagnoses, prescribing treatments, but I was haunted by her case in a way I'd never experienced before. I'd lie awake at night thinking about our conversations, about the unfairness of a 34-year-old mother of two being taken by a disease we couldn't stop. I'd think about Evelyn and Lily reading those letters years from now, their mother's words the only piece of her they'd have left. I'd think about all the other Isabellas out there, all the other families about to be shattered by diagnoses I'd have to deliver. The weight of it became almost unbearable. About a month after the funeral, Tom brought the girls to my office. It wasn't a medical visit. They'd brought me something. A drawing Evelyn had made, showing 4 stick figures holding hands. Tom, Isabella, Evelyn, and Lily. Above them, another Isabella figure with wings. At the bottom, in a child's handwriting, it said, "Thank you for taking care of Mommy." Lily, the 6-year-old, looked up at me with Isabella's eyes and said, "Daddy says you were Mommy's friend and you tried really hard to make her better." I knelt down to their level, and I did something I'd never done in front of a patient's family before. I cried. Not the professional, controlled emotion we're taught to display, but real tears for a woman I couldn't save and 2 children who would grow up without her. That moment changed everything for me. I realized that Isabella's death hadn't broken me. It had opened me. For years, I'd maintained professional distance, believing that emotional detachment was necessary to survive in this field. But Isabella taught me that the opposite was true. Being present, being human, allowing myself to feel the weight of these losses, that's what makes this work meaningful. That's what makes the 47 times and the 48th time, and all the times that will come after, bearable. Not because it gets easier, but because bearing witness to someone's suffering, to their courage, to their love even in the face of death, is a privilege. It's the most human thing we can do for each other. I still practice medicine. I still deliver devastating diagnoses. I still have to tell people there's nothing more we can do. But now, when I say those words, I say them as someone who understands that healing isn't always about curing. Sometimes it's about sitting with someone in their pain. Sometimes it's about holding space for grief and fear and love all at once. Sometimes it's about being present when someone takes their last breath and making sure they don't face that moment alone. Isabella's daughters are teenagers now. Tom sends me updates sometimes, photos of them at school events, on vacation, growing into young women their mother would be proud of. They still have those letters, those pieces of Isabella reaching forward through time. And I still have that drawing, framed in my office, reminding me every day why I do this work. Not because I can always save lives, but because I can always show up for them. And sometimes showing up is everything. Up is